दूसरे दिन का पहला सत्र जो आज है वो मास्टर क्लास है श्री नीलांजन रीता दत्ता जी का।
नमस्ते।
और आसाम से चल के पुणे तक पहुंचना, फिल्म इंस्टीट्यूट तक पहुंचना और वहां से पीजी डिप्लोमा इन एडिटिंग, उसके बाद 2004 में आप वहां से पास आउट हुए। जब स्टूडेंट थे तब इन्होंने एक डिप्लोमा फिल्म बनाई थी वहाँ, उस फिल्म को भी राष्ट्रीय पुरस्कार मिला। उसके बाद द हेड हंटर, उसको राष्ट्रीय पुरस्कार मिला। फिर जो तीसरी फिल्म इन्होंने बनाई वो इस फेस्टिवल में दिखाई जाएगी आज ही। सर, आप अरुणाचल से, या अरुणाचल में बैठा एक बच्चा या स्टूडेंट वो कैसे तय कर पाया कि मुझे सिनेमा में जाना है और सिनेमा में काम करने से पहले मुझे सिनेमा सीखना है या पढ़ना है, ये कैसे तय कर पाए?
हाँ, ये बहुत इंटरेस्टिंग सवाल है बिकॉज मैं हूँ असम से, पर मेरा 11th और 12th में अरुणाचल से किया हुआ हूँ। और जब मैं पढ़ाई कर रहा था तब इंटरनेट था नहीं, मोबाइल था नहीं। सो हम लोगों के लिए इन्फॉर्मेशन बहुत सीमित होता था। न्यूज़पेपर होता था, मुझे भी कोई फिल्म इंस्टीट्यूट का पता नहीं था। मुझे इतना पता था कि सिनेमा हम सबको पसंद है, बचपन से हम फिल्में देख रहे हैं, स्पेशली हिंदी सिनेमा, बिकॉज हिंदी सिनेमा का रीच देश के कोने कोने तक है। अरुणाचल में भी उस ज़माने में फिल्म थिएटर नहीं हुआ करता था, बट देयर यूज्ड टू बी समथिंग कॉल्ड वीडियो हॉल, जो मुझे पता नहीं आज के बच्चों को पता है कि नहीं। वो वीडियो हॉल ऐसा होता था कि VHS कैसेट करके एक होता था, वीडियो कैसेट, वो लगा के वो लोग फिल्म दिखाते थे और हम वहाँ पे फिल्म देखते थे। छोटा छोटा ऐसा हॉल होता था। और फिल्म मैं बहुत ही मिथुन दा का बहुत बड़ा फ़ैन था। सो मैं उनका ज़िंदगी कैसे वो फिल्म स्टार बने, बिकॉज मुझे इतना पता था कि उनका कोई फैमिली बैकग्राउंड नहीं था फिल्म इंडस्ट्री से। सो मैं उनका स्टोरीज ढूंढने लगा। बहुत ही मुश्किल था क्योंकि इंटरनेट नहीं है, मोबाइल नहीं है। और जहाँ तक मुझे पता चला कि वो किसी इंस्टीट्यूट में गए थे जिसका नाम है फिल्म इंस्टीट्यूट। सो फिर मैंने ऑब्वियसली घर पे उस ज़माने में अगर मैं बोलता कि मुझे सिनेमा करने जाना है तो वो कोई करियर ऑप्शन नहीं होता था फैमिली के लिए। तो वो ऑब्वियसली मना कर देते, स्पेशली अरुणाचल से मैं पूना आ जाऊँ, बहुत ही दूर है। सो मेरे पिताजी को मैंने जब बताया कि मुझे पूना जाना है तो उन्होंने पूछा क्यों जाना है, तो मैंने बोला मुझे पेट्रोटेक करना है। पेट्रोटेक एक कोर्स है जो सिर्फ पूना में होता है, MSc पेट्रोलियम टेक्नोलॉजी, वाडिया कॉलेज में होता है। सो पिताजी मान गए और मैं पूना आ गया और मैं साइंस में एडमिशन लिया। पर मैं उसी दौरान पूना में नेशनल फिल्म आर्काइव्स ऑफ इंडिया है, जो हर सैटरडे को फिल्में दिखाते हैं और उसमें एक फ़िल्म क्लब होता है। मैं उसमें मेंबरशिप लिया और दुनिया भर के फिल्में देखने लगा। और मुझे तब लगा कि आई नीड टू बी ट्रेन्ड टू गेट इनटू दिस आर्ट। इट्स नॉट लाइक आई कैन जस्ट रेज मनी एंड मेक माई स्टोरी। हम सबको कहानी कहना तो आता है, हम सबके अंदर एक कहानी है, पर उसको कहने का तरीका जानने के लिए आई थॉट इट इज़ बेटर दैट आई गेट इनटू अ प्रॉपर फिल्म स्कूल, गेट ट्रेन्ड, एंड देन द जर्नी बिगैन. Obviously, it was a long journey because I did my graduation from Pune, then I did my masters from Pune University, and FTI बंद हो गया. 98 में FTI बंद हो गया 3 साल के लिए, क्योंकि वो कुछ रीवैम्प हो रहा था। और तो मेरे को लगा अब पता नहीं क्या होगा। पर मैं फिर मास्टर्स करते करते किस्मत अच्छा था, 2000 में FTI खुला और एंट्रेंस होता है FTI का। एंड बिकॉज मैं वर्ल्ड सिनेमा देख रहा था नेशनल फिल्म आर्काइव्स में सालों से, सो आई हैड अ नॉलेज ऑफ वर्ल्ड सिनेमा बाय दैट टाइम। बिकॉज FTI का इंटरव्यू अगर आप कभी जाएंगे रिटर्न के बाद तो इंटरव्यू में दे स्पेशली लुक कि आपका पैशन क्या है, डू यू हैव द पैशन, बिकॉज ये इंडस्ट्री ईजी नहीं है। मतलब इट्स नॉट लाइक कि मैं FTI से आया हूँ तो मेरे लिए सारे दरवाजे खुल जाएंगे। इट्स अ लॉट ऑफ स्ट्रगल, वी ऑल हैव टू स्ट्रगल। सो यू नीड टू हैव दैट पैशन, अदरवाइज यू कांट. I think it's true for any kind of profession. You need to have that passion because there is a struggle, the road ahead. It's not an easy rows of bed, you know. So that's how I cracked FTI, and rest is history. And then obviously I went into editing. उसका भी एक reason है कि editing as a process. After film changed from silent cinema to dialogues, and just before that, editing became the tool of main storytelling, narrative. So to an extent, cinema is made on editing table. Fiction, of course, there is a script, but you can say that the first draft of your film is a script. The last draft of your script is on the table. because you do change the scene numbers, the structure, everything is redone. So I went into editing. उसके पीछे भी एक कारण है. फिल्म इंस्टीट्यूट से निकले हुए कुछ एडिटर है जो आज के टाइम में बहुत बड़े डायरेक्टर्स हैं, आप जानते हैं उनको. संजय लीला बंसाली एडिटिंग ग्रेजुएट है, राजकुमार हिरानी एडिटिंग ग्रेजुएट है, डेविड धवान एडिटिंग ग्रेजुएट है. तो उन्होंने मुझे कहीं पे प्रेरित किया कि एडिटिंग लूँ, ना कि डायरेक्शन, और मैं एडिटिंग लिया. ऑल्दो मुझे डायरेक्टर ही बनना था. एंड दैट्स हाउ द जर्नी स्टार्टेड. या
क्या अंतर आता है प्रशिक्षण लेके फिल्म मेकर बनना या ऐसे ही संघर्ष करके फिल्म मेकर बनना?
अंतर मैं ये नहीं बोलूँगा कि जो डायरेक्टली इंडस्ट्री जाते हैं वो फिल्म अच्छा नहीं बनाते या नहीं बना सकते. ऑफ कोर्स रास्ता शायद थोड़ा और डिफ़िकल्ट होता है. फिल्म इंस्टीट्यूट से निकलने का एक बहुत बड़ा एडवांटेज ये है कि यू नो व्हाट नॉट टू डू. सो व्हेन आई से यू नो व्हाट नॉट टू डू मीन्स दैट इन द इंस्टीट्यूट वी आर गिवन अ स्पेस टू डू मिस्टेक्स. सो हमारे हर साल में हम कुछ फिल्में बनाते हैं और उसका आइडिया ये है कि आप जितना गलती करना है कर लीजिए ताकि बाहर जाके ना करना पड़े. सो वी डू अ लॉट ऑफ मिस्टेक्स इन द कैंपस, जो अपॉर्चुनिटी शायद बाहर को नहीं मिलेगा, बिकॉज आपके लिए एक चांस होता है, एक मौका होता है, एंड यू हैव टू पुट योर बेस्ट फुट. एंड एज वी नो मुंबई में शायद रोज़ आज भी बहुत लोग आते हैं सिनेमा के लिए. सो इट्स अ वर्ल्ड फुल ऑफ पीपल विथ पैशन, विथ ड्राइव. सो वहाँ पे आपको कुछ अलग होने के लिए या कुछ करने के लिए शायद फिल्म इंस्टीट्यूट उस तरीके से हेल्प करता है. बट स्ट्रगल वाइज आई थिंक इट इज़ द सेम स्ट्रगल फॉर अ फिल्म स्कूल गाय और अ नॉन फिल्म स्कूल गाय. फिल्म स्कूल ऑल्सो हेल्प्स यू बिकॉज आपका एक पीयर होता है. सो व्हेन यू कम फ्रॉम अ फिल्म स्कूल देयर आर लॉट ऑफ सीनियर्स हु आर ऑलरेडी फ्रॉम द फिल्म स्कूल. तो वो आपको एक थोड़ा सा आसानी होता है कि आपको शायद थोड़ा एंट्री मिलता है, लोगों से मिलने का मौका मिलता है. अदर देन दैट आई डोंट थिंक एनीथिंग एल्स चेंजेस as long as the guy who has not come from a film school has also done his studies. अब ये एक बहुत इंटरेस्टिंग चीज़ है जब मैं बोलता हूँ स्टडीज़, कि सिनेमा के लिए स्टडी ज़रूरी है क्या. It's a very debatable point. I still remember that when Film Institute first opened in 1960s, Satyajit Ray, the great filmmaker, he had come to the institute on the opening and he had declared, it's a officially recorded statement, that cinema can't be taught. So the idea of a film school is futile. He criticized it. And on the third year, जब पहला बैच निकला, Satyajit Ray was called to see the student diploma film. And he came and saw the diploma film and he that time changed his statement and he said that I was wrong. Today I realize that cinema can be taught. So that's what it is, because for a long period of time, people never thought that cinema can be taught. अगर हम history में चले जाए, the main film theorist of the world, like if I can mention few names, one Russian filmmaker called Sergei Eisenstein, who created a movement in the theory of montage, was actually a physicist. He was a physics guy. He was not from cinema. Similarly, if I talk of André Bazin, who is a French philosopher, who never made films but wrote on films, never came from films. He was a philosopher. So this idea of a film school, now we all know of theatre, drama school. Now theatre has a long 1,000 years of history. Theatre has a very long history. Cinema is a very new art form in that sense even today. It is only maybe 120 years old now, if I do the calculation right. It's a very new art form, and if we look at cinema as an art form, we have to realize that cinema has derived from other art forms. So cinema uses acting, which comes from theatre. Acting is a very integral part of theatre. Cinema uses music, which comes from music. And cinema uses shots or compositions, which is the camera, which comes from painting. So cinema has borrowed a lot from other arts. Is cinema in itself an art, quote unquote, was the question. That is cinema an art at all? Now that is where this theorist came, and they discovered that no, cinema is actually an art and it can create its own space. Now, if you allow me, I can go a little deeper into this idea that what is cinema as an art. Now, cinema as an art is that when two people are sitting, the point of view that the camera uses us is a choice made by the cameraman in consultation with the director. And he can either make us look real or he can actually make us look surreal. So the moment I say surreal, that means he is not doing a representation of reality. He is creating a hyper reality, which is something related to the man behind the camera. So that's how cinema was first discovered to be a new art form, and of course there are ample amount of cinema. Now directors, I think you have given a tribute to a great master of that thing who just passed away recently, Jean-Luc Godard. Now Godard, it is of course the movement of cinema began as an art form by the Europeans mainly. It started from Russia. Cinema is an art. Now cinema is a business. Cinema is also a product because cinema is an economically driven medium. It's very, nowadays I will say that it is becoming a little democratized because of digital medium. For a long period of time, it was a very expensive medium. So it was also a product. So Americans used this as a product. For them, it was a model to make it into a business zone. Russians used this mainly for propaganda, but they also discovered theories. And French. Now, there are two great filmmakers that I can name you who are our masters today. One is Jean-Luc Godard, and the other is Robert Bresson. Now, to take it more deeper, because since it talks of direction, so I will say that there are actually two types of cinema. One cinema is a medium which uses the resources of other arts and uses the camera to record it, which is what 90% of cinema in the world is. That we use elements of other arts, like I mentioned, painting, theater, music, architecture because we create sets, and we use the camera to record it. That is what 90% of cinema is. But there is another kind of cinema in which we uses the resources of cinematograph and use the camera to create it. Now, this is a very different kind of cinema that I'm talking of, propagated by a man called Robert Bresson, whose shishya you are again, I think, showing a film in India now, Kumar Sahani. Now, Kumar Sahani and Manikal are two great filmmakers, again from my film school. They followed that path. So they uses resources of cinematograph. Now, what is resources of cinematograph? Cinematograph, the term, is not related to cinematography here. Achha. Cinematograph means that you use the camera to create scenes where emotion is taken off. So the discourse is very different in that kind of art. Now when I say discourse, आप जब एक फिल्म देखते हैं तो आप कुछ इमोशंस को महसूस करते हैं. कभी आप हंसते हैं थिएटर में, एंड कभी आप रो भी देते हैं. You don't even realize there are tears. So you are completely taken into a zone. I will come, how that happens, I will come to that later. But there's another kind of cinema where the idea is that you don't get into that zone at all. You see cinema as it is, you know that it's actually a play of light. You can just put up your hand, close the beam coming out from the projector, and your screen will go black. So it's actually false. There is nothing which is real. The size of a normal actor is 20 times his size that you are seeing. Yet you are getting attached. So the other kind of cinema detaches you. It detaches you from the story, creates a thought in your head after you have come out of the theater, and creates a discourse. So I will give you an example of a film, one film, there are ample films like that, is Balthazar by Robert Bresson. So when Robert Bresson made Balthazar, he said that actors for me are not here to emote emotion. So as an example, he said that cinema has the power, theater has a limit of space. Cinema doesn't have a limit in that sense of space and time. So when you don't have limit of space and time, how can you manipulate it? So if you see in theater, if a ship, एक जहाज है जो डूबने वाला है, अगर थिएटर में मुझे दिखाना है, तो क्योंकि वो समुंदर में तो स्टेज नहीं, मतलब मैं स्टेज तो समुंदर में नहीं क्रिएट कर सकता, तो मैं एक जहाज का सेट बनाऊंगा और मैं जहाज डूब रहा है वो मैं एक्टर के इमोशन से इवोक करूंगा आप पे. एक्टर डर रहा है, एक्टर कुछ रिएक्ट कर रहा है और आपको समझ में आ रहा है कि वो जहाज डूबने वाला है. सिनेमा में मैं तो जहाज रियल लाऊंगा, रियल समुंदर होगा, फिर मैं एक्टर को क्यों इमोशन नहीं इमोट करने बोलूँ. So in Bresson's film, the actor is actually not emoting. He is standing and you are realizing that the ship will sink. Now this is the other kind of cinema, so it detaches you. So it is known as cinema of deconstruction. Now you all know of construction. एक brick से हम एक building बनाते हैं. दूसरा तरीका होता है कि एक बिल्डिंग बनी हुई है, उससे सारा ब्रिक को आप निकालिए and show how that building was made. So that is the other kind of cinema.
अच्छा, इसमें क्योंकि आपने 2 फिल्में, फीचर फिल्में बनाई हैं और दोनों इंडिपेंडेंट फिल्में आपने बनाई
जी.
आज का जो दौर है वो स्टूडियो कल्चर का दौर है, क्या चैलेंज है जी?
हाँ, तो इसमें मैं करेक्शन लाऊंगा रवि जी. स्टूडियो कल्चर का दौर एक्चुअली ऑर्सन वेल्स के टाइम से चालू हो गया था. जैसे मैंने कहा कि सिनेमा इज ऑल्सो अ प्रोडक्ट बिकॉज इकोनॉमिकली ड्रिवन है. सो देयर इज अ फेमस फिल्म कॉल्ड सिटीजन केन. नाउ सिटीजन केन जब बनाया जा रहा था, सो देयर वाज अ टाइम व्हेन द स्टूडियो वाज ऑलमोस्ट फायरिंग ऑर्सन वेल्स बिकॉज दे डिडंट लाइक द कट. So studio has always been there because it's also a business. And similarly, studios also are driven ki emotion mein. They are not driven by art as such. They are driven by a mechanism of business because they are putting in money, they want their money back. And I don't think it's a problem. Obviously, it has to be a business, otherwise hum survive nahi karenge. But independent cinema uske बावजूद exist करता है. उसमें struggles बहुत है because you have to ensure that you can raise a certain amount of funding to make a film. And once you can do that, the biggest challenge is distribution. So my suggestion is that जब आप फिल्म आज के डेट में, especially in today's era, there is one thing which has become easy for us, which is how to make a film. You can actually make a film on an iPhone. It's not a problem. Now there is a very famous film called Blue is the Warmest Colour. It got Palme d'Or in Cannes. It was shot on a phone. And it got Palme d'Or, So you can shoot. That has been handled. But distribution. Distribution is a bottleneck because distribution is controlled by a mechanism where you have to ensure that how do you throw your film. So here comes Cine Festa. Now, platforms like film festivals can become an avenue for independent filmmakers because that gives you audience which otherwise you won't get. Platforms like YouTube has democratized the medium again. Now, if we all know of, आप लोगों ने सबने पंचायत देखा होगा. The creators of Panchayat is TVF, and TVF started their journey from YouTube. So they could begin their journey because of this democratization of the medium. So there is a struggle, but the struggle is less if you know how to plan it. If you're thinking of making a commercial film and you think that you can do it without studio, I think you are mistaking it because it's a big bottleneck because it is also, in India especially, it's also driven by Star. For a moment, it became easy for us when OTTs came. OTTs were taking content and then COVID happened. And when COVID happened, they took a lot of content. And today OTT is also asking for Star. So unfortunately, OTT is also now slowly getting into the same distribution zone where theaters were. So OTTs, if they are also asking for Star, that means they are not looking at the content. So unfortunately, where money is, the business will go there. So as an independent filmmaker or whoever wants to become an independent filmmaker, I think what you need to figure out is that you make a film which is driven by content, number one. It has to be a content which first it has to be very close to your heart. Then only you can make a film like that. And once you know that it is very close to your heart and it will appeal to certain kind of people, go ahead, make it. Don't bother about the paraphernalia of cinema. You don't need a generator. Don't need truckloads of light. Not anymore in digital medium. Go ahead, make it, and use film festivals as your platform to garner that kind of noise. Now, there is a Marathi film called Court, which was made by Chaitanya Tamane. When Court was made, I know the makers very well. They actually spent a lot of money. Court is not a cheap film in that sense. They spent around 4 crore. But still, it was an independent film. It was not a star-driven film, and it was a content-driven film. And it was not getting into any big festivals. So they were really panicking till Venice happened. Once Venice happened, Court is now on OTT platform. Now, if you look at a film by Payal Kapadia, who just got the Cannes in this year, Grand Prix. Now, Payal's journey is sorted. She is an independent filmmaker, and her journey is sorted because she got Grand Prix. Every day in the world, there are minimum 9 festivals. That's the data. Every day 9 film festival होता है देश में, दुनिया में.
जी.
So film festivals की कमी तो है नहीं. बस आपको पता होना चाहिए कहाँ भेजना है, कैसे भेजना है. And finally YouTube.
अब बेस्ट मीडियम मानते हैं यूट्यूब को?
It's still democratized. जितने दिन तक I believe government of India is trying to bring a new bill. We have to see what the bill is and how that bill works. I hope that bill will not try to curb that, because there's also external pressures working against YouTube. Not because of political reasons, not because of that at all, because of economic reasons. Because there are content creators on YouTube who are making loads of money just by making content every day. There are many like that, you know. So YouTube till now is a democratized yes platform, and I hope it remains so. Yeah. And if tomorrow a bill comes, I'm sure there will be other platforms which will come up. Because internet has made our life quite open in that sense. The world has become accessible to us because of internet. So that's an advantage, yeah.
अब मैं क्योंकि मैं बिहार से हूँ, तो बिहार के प्रति मेरा हम सभी का एक विशेष प्रेम रहता है. और यहाँ एक कमी ये है कि हमारे यहाँ सिनेमा की पढ़ाई या सिनेमा पे बातचीत या इस तरह के आयोजन, इसकी कमी है थोड़ी. ऐसे जगह के लिए क्या सलाह होगा? कैसे वो ग्रो करें? इच्छा है वो जाएं, करें, कैसे करें, कहाँ पहुँचें, किन को अप्रोच करें? सभी फिल्म स्कूल नहीं जा सकते हैं, वहाँ सिर्फ एक स्ट्रीम में सिर्फ 12 लोगों का सिलेक्शन है. 150 करोड़ की आबादी है इस देश की, वो शमन नहीं कर सकता. तो ऐसे बच्चे जो 2000 किलोमीटर दूर बैठे हैं, सिनेमा देख रहे हैं, यूट्यूब देख रहे हैं, रील्स देख रहे हैं, बना भी रहे हैं, और इच्छा भी है उनको सुभाष घई बनने की, हिरानी बनने की. छोटा नाम क्यों लें? नाम लेंगे तो बड़े लेंगे. तो कैसे बने?
जी, कैसे बने उसका तो
और कैसे पढ़ें?
हाँ, उसका सोल्यूशन तो नहीं है मेरे पास. देयर वाज अ ग्रेट फिल्म एडिटर जिन्होंने गॉडफादर एडिट किया था, वॉल्टर मर्च. So I will just quote something from Walter Murch. He had taught us. So उन्होंने कहा था कि एक टेबल में 4 पैर होता है. 4 में से हार्डवर्क, क्रिएटिविटी, टैलेंट, ये 3 मस्ट है. चौथा लक है. अभी अगर आपके पास 3 क्रिएटिविटी, टैलेंट, हार्डवर्क, उसमें से टैलेंट कम है, पैर थोड़ा सा लड़खड़ा रहा है, पर लक है, तो आपका टेबल स्टेडी होगा. आपके पास तीनों है पर लक नहीं है तो आपका टेबल नहीं रुकेगा. नाउ दैट इज़ अ रियलिटी इन द मेन स्ट्रीम मीडिया, इन मेन स्ट्रीम सिनेमा. देयर इज़ अ लॉट ऑफ डेस्टिनी. यू हैव टू बी एट द राइट प्लेस एट द राइट टाइम. Now, I don't know how many of you know that Spielberg actually sneaked into the studio and met the narrator, narrated his script. It was not a planned meeting, although he came from a film school. So yes, there is a luck for mainstream. But अगर बिहार में आप बैठे हुए हो, जैसे मैं अरुणाचल में था, so I have a lot of people who come. अभी भी फिल्म इंस्टीट्यूट में मेरे बहुत सारे स्टूडेंट्स ऐसे हैं जो अरुणाचल से आते हैं, असम से आते हैं, मणिपुर से आते हैं. Now, how do they get there is something which is, there is something called drive. There has to be a drive within you. It can't be a zone where you think that I want to become Hirani, that's why I want to do. No. You want to become Raviraaj Paatel, और आपकी कहानी को आपको कहना है. आप नए हो. There is a saying कि सारा कहानी, every story is told. There is no new story. That is true. But every story, you can be telling it differently, क्योंकि आप नए हो, आप तो पहली बार पैदा हुए हो ना दुनिया में, so आपका कहने का तरीका आप ही का होगा. पहले तो उसको खोजिए. उसको खोजना बहुत ईजी है. फॉर एनी फिल्म यू हैव टू गेट इनटू अ डिसिप्लिन ऑफ राइटिंग. You can't think of a film, take the camera, go ahead and shoot it. You have to first think of the film, write it on a paper, visualize it. And you have to see the film first, even after anybody has come on as your crew. Forget that. You see the film first. Once you are happy that you can see something, start rewriting it. बिना शूट किए हुए आप इमेजिन कर रहे हो, rewrite it. So maybe second draft, third draft, fourth draft, and then you are happy. Then get into your making zone. अब उसके लिए इसके लिए एक सिंपल टेक्निक मैं बोलता हूँ कि सिनेमा हम हमेशा एक फ्रेम में देखते हैं. यू ऑल नो दिस इज द फ्रेम. सो आपने देखा होगा डायरेक्टर्स ऐसे देख रहे हैं. Now when I do this, actually I am omitting this side and I am only watching them. So cinema is in a frame. There is a frame line. So दुनिया को एक फ्रेम लाइन में देखना शुरू कर दीजिए. किसी कॉफी हाउस में बैठे हुए हैं, just close one eye and look at the frame. So just begin creating frames in your world. सिनेमा का सबसे बड़ा स्ट्रेंथ है ऑब्जर्वेशन. You have to have a very keen eye and you have to observe. Like आप एक रेलवे स्टेशन में है, कहीं जा रहे हैं. Internalize it. When I say internalize it, just sit there for a moment. और जो भी साउंड है उसको इंटरनलाइज कीजिए. जो भी हो रहा है, जैसे भी चहल हो रहा है, पहल हो रहा है, इसको थोड़ा इंटरनलाइज कीजिए. ज़रूरी नहीं है वो मुंबई स्टेशन है, शायद एक छोटे गांव का छोटा सा रेलवे स्टेशन है. इट विल हैव अ वेरी डिस्टिंक्ट फ्लेवर फ्रॉम अ मुंबई चर्च गेट स्टेशन. And that observation is something that you have to constantly develop. So as a student of cinema, the first thing we do is that we go into something called observation tour. ये फिल्म इंस्टीट्यूट में होता है. उसके लिए आपको इंस्टीट्यूट नहीं चाहिए. अगर मैं आपको बता रहा हूँ, आप यहीं बैठ के कर सकते हैं, बिहार में कर सकते हैं, कहीं पे भी कर सकते हैं. Which is going to a crematorium. You know, a crematorium is a space जहाँ हम कोई जाते नहीं है नॉर्मली. हम जाते हैं जब हमारे फैमिली में कोई ट्रेजिडी हो जाए. एंड दैट्स नॉट अ स्पेस दैट वी वांट टू गो इनफ, राइट. जाइए, वहाँ बैठिए, और वहाँ पे आपको डिफरेंट प्लेथोरा ऑफ इमोशंस दिखेगा. उसको इंटरनलाइज कीजिए. राइट इट डाउन. नाउ व्हेन यू राइट इट डाउन, डोंट राइट इट लाइक अ रिपोर्टाज. डोंट लाइक अ रिपोर्ट, बिकॉज यू आर नॉट गेटिंग इनटू अ जर्नलिस्टिक स्पेस. राइट इट बाय योर इंटरप्रिटेशन. Now here I will come back to what I had told before, that I will come back. There is something called apparatus theory. It's a very interesting theory. It was discovered by a French film critic called Baudy. Cinema is a medium which is created through an apparatus. Apparatus means equipment. So a camera becomes your apparatus, and the screen is the final outcome of that apparatus through your projector. Now, if you see a cinema, cinema is shown in a very interesting zone. When you go to a film theater, सबसे पहले आपको बताया जाता है मोबाइल फ़ोन साइलेंट कर लीजिए, राइट. अंधेरा हो जाता है, लाइट्स ऑफ, और सामने एक पर्दा आ जाता है जहाँ पे जो भी हो रहा है. So you cannot avoid but to see it. Until unless, of course, you close your eyes, but still you will see it because your ears you can't close. Cinema is also not a silent medium anymore. So there is sound. So you're still there in that zone. So it is what apparatus theory talks about is that basically what cinema is doing to your life is कि वो आपको actually is taking into a dream world. Now जब हम सपना, when you see a dream, we all dream, and if you start noting down your dreams has a very interesting analogy which is written by many philosophers, especially Sigmund Freud and ह्यूम. ड्रीम्स में एक बहुत इंटरेस्टिंग डाइसेक्शन और एडिटिंग होता है. आप शायद एक सपने में आपके एक दोस्त के साथ पटना में समोसा खा रहे थे, और कट्टू आप पूना में चल रहे थे. ड्रीम जम्प्स लाइक सिनेमा डज. सो इट इज एक्चुअली अ रिप्रेजेंटेशन ऑफ रियलिटी इन द ड्रीम स्पेस बाय यूजिंग द कैमरा. दैट्स व्हाट apparatus theory tells you. And because it does, now cinema का एक definition है. Cinema का definition is cinema is suspension of disbelief. Now suspension of disbelief is when you see a hero jump off from the 10th-storied building, hit 10 people, and go away or run away, you believe it. You might criticize it after you come out of the theater. In that point, inside the theater, you believe it. It is suspension of disbelief. ये जो सस्पेंशन ऑफ डिसबिलीफ है, इसको क्रिएट करने के लिए आपको सबसे पहले वर्ल्ड को देखना है, बिकॉज इट इज़ अ रिप्रेजेंटेशन ऑफ रियलिटी. सिनेमा इज अ रिप्रेजेंटेशन ऑफ रियलिटी. ऑफ कोर्स दैट रियलिटी, हाउ यू डिपिक्ट इट, differs according to the craft you are going in. Now, are you going into the craft that 90% of us are doing? Maybe you are. then you will use mediums of the other art form and depict that reality in your sense of reality. Now, when I say your sense of reality, when you omit out the other things, you will decide what all to omit. You might omit out everybody, and I just keep him. So I have omitted out everything. Now that's my representation of this reality. Or I might represent that reality and omit out them. So again, my choice of reality, which works best for depicting that story or narrative. Now the narrative is the integral thread to it. Now there is another medium of cinema which is non-narrative. So I don't know if you guys have heard of an Indian filmmaker, very celebrated Indian filmmaker, Reeta Datta. Yeah. Now if you see his films, he's a very celebrated filmmaker. उनके film आपको obviously theatre में नहीं मिलेगा. He makes a lot of films. He's a Europe में very celebrated guy. उनका film आप देखेंगे तो there is no narrative thread. कहानी नहीं मिलेगा आपको directly surface पे. Now that's also another kind of cinema. पर उसके लिए आपको फिर अलग एक रास्ता. You have to choose another path altogether. It's massively theory driven, which is something what for an extent Kumar did. You know, so. That zone, I think, is difficult for us to get in until unless we start reading and get into an academic space. But the other zone is available to all of us. Start observing your world with a conscious mind why you are doing that observation. Don't become a voyeur. Now, there is a distinction between becoming an observer and a voyeur. I'm not asking you to become a voyeur. I'm asking you to become an observer, you know. So observe and know your space and your limit too. Now, voyeurism can lead to troubles. Don't become a voyeur, but become a keen observer. Yeah.
अब कुछ सवाल आपके
I'd rather like, yeah, if you guys have any questions, you can ask me.
NID, आप कुछ पूछिए. NID का नाम मैंने इसलिए लिया कि अभी हाल ही में अनुराग कश्यप का एक इंटरव्यू सुन रहा था, तो किसी ने जर्नलिस्ट ने सवाल किया कि फिल्म की पढ़ाई के लिए FTI जाना कितना बेहतर है, तो उन्होंने कहा कि नहीं जाना चाहिए, कि वो FTI से बेहतर है कि वो NID जाए, डिज़ाइन स्कूल जाए. सहमत हैं आप?
I don't agree to it at all. I don't agree to it at all. उसका दो reason है. I have taught in NID also. And I have nothing against NID as such. Now, a great filmmaker, Dibakar Banerjee, is from NID. So there is no problem of NID. I have gone there, taught, brilliant student. But NID actually is a design school. Now, when Anurag Kashyap is saying, he is completely negating the fact that cinema is not only a matter of design. Cinema is also a matter of heart. You know, so
उनका ये कहना था कि जिसने सिनेमा बनाया ही नहीं, सिर्फ पढ़ा है, मैं उस पर बिलीव ही नहीं करता हूँ जिसने बनाया नहीं.
पर ये फिल्म इंस्टीट्यूट के बारे में सच नहीं है, क्योंकि आप तो फिल्म इंस्टीट्यूट में जितने फिल्म बनाते हो एज अ स्टूडेंट किसी भी फिल्म स्कूल में, आप शायद ही कहीं और बनाओगे, along with the kind of technological knowledge that you get. वो बहुत इंपॉर्टेंट चीज़ है. जब आप सबसे पहले पूछे थे कि एक डिफरेंस क्या है जो फिल्म स्कूल नहीं गया और डायरेक्ट बॉम्बे गया जी, एक बहुत बड़ा डिफरेंस है कि जो डायरेक्ट बॉम्बे गया उसको सबसे पहले कैमरा के व्यू फाइंडर से कुछ देखने के लिए बहुत टाइम लगता है, बिकॉज एक हायरकी होता है. DOP उसको अलाउ ही नहीं करेगा. फिल्म स्कूल में डे 1 से आपके पास सब तरह का कैमरा है, गैजेट्स है, ऑल टेक्नोलॉजिकल एडवांसमेंट इज देयर इन अ फिल्म स्कूल. So that's a big advantage because you are technologically not very sound. And element cinema banana, film school actually teaches you not by only talking. That's not true what Anurag, I have full respect to him. By the way, he taught me. So that's very interesting. He took our workshop for screenplay writing. So he also tried his hand in teaching us to that same film school that he thinks doesn't work anymore. And his cameramen, all his cameramen, from Ravi to his latest Kennedy Films cameraman, Sylvester, are all Film Institute graduates. So what he is talking of, correction यहाँ पे है कि Anurag is saying, film school में direction नहीं सिखाना चाहिए. So he is saying that film schools should supply technicians, which is editor, sound and camera, but stop making directors. Now that's a very डिफिकल्ट स्टेटमेंट बिकॉज व्हाट हैपन्स इज कि उनका कहना है कि एफटीआई से आप डायरेक्टर का नाम लीजिए, कौन निकला है डायरेक्टर, यू नो. नाउ दैट्स अ वेरी कॉमन मिसनॉमर. एक्चुअली फिल्म इंस्टीट्यूट से डायरेक्शन स्टूडेंट्स बहुत निकले हैं और बहुत काम कर रहे हैं, पर वो सारे राजकुमार हिरानी नहीं बने हैं. दे आर नॉट इन द कमर्शियल स्पेस. लाइक आई मेंशन अमित दत्ता, they are not getting there. They have their own journey. So that's what a film school does. A film school will give you, there are 10 students who come out. Out of the 10, 2 might go to Mumbai. Rest goes back to their regional centers. So there are people who are making film in Manipuri. Now there is a very famous Manipuri filmmaker. उनका फिल्म अगर आपको मिले तो आप ज़रूर देखिए, हावबान पवन कुमार. Now he's a film school graduate. He makes beautiful films in Manipur. हमें नहीं पता. That does not by any means demean him. He is in his craft. So ये statement इसलिए कहा जाता है क्योंकि FTI के direction students constantly commercial cinema में आते ही नहीं हैं. Very few of them they do. Now that's why this statement is given, I think. So all respect to him, I don't agree to it at all.
By NID means National Institute of Directors. I have a question.
Yeah,
As
please.
a director, 2 parts to it. One, अगर कोई डायरेक्शन के स्टूडेंट हैं और वो जानना चाहें कि एक्टर्स को कैसे हैंडल किया जाता है या क्या बेहतर तरीका है, एंड एज एन एक्टर व्हाट कैन आई लर्न फ्रॉम द डायरेक्टर.
Yeah. So thank you for asking because I skipped it. It's a brilliant question because one of the toughest things that a director faces is actor handling. Now, when I say actor handling, the term may sound this thing very derogatory or handling, but that's what the term is. Unfortunately, in film theory, we talk of actor handling. We have modules for it. Now, actor handling is that आप जब cinema लिखते हो as a director, you have created a character with flesh and blood on your head. It's on paper. Once you give it to the actor, he is a man or a woman with flesh and blood, and he will interpret it and then depict it. When he depicts it, you have to realize that there are nuances which you have not written because you were writing on paper and comes out as the actor performs with his craft. Acting is also a craft, it's a huge craft. Now his gesture, his posture, वहाँ पे the director as handling of actor, we say that when an actor brings his craft, you bring in your craft in knowing how much of gesture and posture you need and how much you need to cut down. Now all great actors, all actors as a matter of fact, great, small, big, they are quite strong in their own craft. But the character that you have written, he has interpreted it, you have to correct it according to the best that you feel is what you wanted to. That's what we do in actor handling. Now nowadays a lot of workshops happen before films. I think the workshops mainly happen to make the characters become free amongst themselves. You know, so that's the reason. So that when the real shootings begins, the actors have a chemistry between them because it shows. That's the reason of the workshop. Otherwise, craft-wise, all actors are already there. Other than maybe because cinema is a collaborative medium. It's not, frankly speaking, a director's. Theatre is I will say an actor's medium, film is a director's medium, but director's medium with a lot of collaboration. And as an actor, you need to then become proactive and bring in those elements which are missing from the writing. Because when I write a character, I have thought of it कि आप ऐसे बोलोगे डायलॉग को, पर जब आप बोल रहे हो शायद आपके अंदर से एक फील आ रहा है because you become that character. So a very classic example of this is when Mithunda did Swami Vivekanand, and he was playing the character of Krishna Paramahans. Even 6 months after the film, he was behaving like Ramakrishna. Because they breathe, they live that character. So that was not written like that. And then Mithunda actually did a lot of improvisation. Now those improvisation, you need to convince the director if he is not understanding that why it becomes imperative. That's where I think the director needs to learn from the actor. And of course, the actor needs to collaborate more because a lot of actors also come on set and try to become the director's actor. A lot of actors say that we are director's actor. I think all actors are director's actor because the medium itself is a director's medium. But this collaboration need to, as more the collaboration, better the film will be. That's what I think is the truth. Yeah.
फिल्म मेकिंग के प्रैक्टिस में आए उसके पहले भी ऑब्जर्व किया पेंटिंग या डांस के लिए, लेकिन इस फील्ड में आने के बाद थोड़ा एक्टिव मतलब रिसर्च करने के लिए अभी हम गांव गए और वहाँ पे बहुत ऐसे दादी नानी लोग के पास बैठ के कहानी सुन रहे हैं, बात कर रहे हैं, तो हमेशा एक ये रहता था कि किसी मतलब से, मतलब एक सेल्फिशनेस है जिसके कारण हम उनसे बैठ के बात कर रहे हैं, तो ये एथिक्स का क्वेश्चन अराइज।
Yeah, I think a lot of us go through this ethical question actually because art in itself is a medium which to an extent is self-preserving. I will not say selfish, self-preserving is the word. Now we know if we read biography of a lot of painters also, like if we read about Van Gogh, mostly you will find that people were not pleasant. They were not, the society never found them pleasant, you know. The reason being that we are into this space where we are doing something for our craft. So जब आप किसी से कहानी सुन रहे हो, first of all you have to completely erase this thought from your head that you are doing it for your craft. No, you are not, because वो कहानी शायद आप कभी बनाओगे भी नहीं. So you are not using it. Maybe tomorrow when you write something, a part of that story will inspire you. Now I'll give you an example. When we write script, we have to name characters. No, सारे actors character का तो नाम होगा. So when I write, I find that mostly the names that I give are of people whom I know. You know, इतना नाम दिमाग में आता नहीं है. So it's, I will call somebody, like if you see Shadow Assassins today, the inspector is called Rupak Das. And Rupak Das is my batchmate. So the names that, so is it an ethical question? I didn't ask him, and I'm using his name. No, it's, do I have an ethical problem? No, I don't, because I have been, Rupak Das that I'm using, the original Rupak Das just became an inspiration for me as a name. But the Rupak Das I am writing is my Rupak Das. So even when you go out and observe and all, you will finally create a reality that belongs to you, belongs to nobody else. So ethically, you are not in that space. Now, if you go into shooting a non-fiction film, let's say you are doing a documentary film. In documentary, actually, a lot of ethical questions come. Now, there are a lot of documentary filmmakers who actually even don't use filters in camera. They are so much, they believe to be keeping the art so pious as documentary is supposed to be. But अगर आप अभी documentary, बहुत सारे documentary filmmaking में आप देखोगे कि match cut होता है. Now in a real fiction, अगर आप किसी को shoot कर रहे हो और जब edit कर रहे हो, until unless you have multi-camera setup, match cut नहीं हो सकता. Mostly documentaries are single camera. So match cut कैसे हो रहा है? Means that guy who is not an actor, is doing his work, was asked to repeat that work. Now that's again, is it ethical? Non-ethical. Now for the craft, a lot of documentary filmmakers have vouched that for the craft, as long as the craft talks of certain things which is bigger than what you see on the screen and successfully creates a discourse, then the question of ethics is taken away. So you have to create that discourse. So when you are doing a fiction, I think it's anyway you are doing a fiction. The moment you are doing a fiction, it's you. And keep it in your mind that as a filmmaker, you will be seen. It's your worldview that gets depicted. Good, bad, ugly, but it's your worldview. I hope I answered you.
और कोई?
So how do you differentiate between good cinema and bad cinema?
I think all cinema is good, number one. I think there is nothing called commercial cinema, art cinema. Okay. Pathar Pachali really did good business at that point of time. So that's my position. Then what works is that, see, any film, we might just trash it out. If you, like most of the, there is a culture that I see that when you go to a cinema hall, when the titles come, you will see that 70% of the people have walked out. But you have to remember those names have put sweat and blood in making it. You might not have liked it. You might have problems with it. Come out, discuss, look at those names. So for me, there is nothing called good and bad cinema. Is the cinema successful in driving the message that it wanted to, is the question. So maybe a film I don't like because the narrative that it was trying to portray, जो कहानी वो कहना चाहता था, शायद वो मेरे को छुआ नहीं या मेरे तक पहुंचा नहीं. So ठीक है, unsuccessful attempt, but still an attempt. So that's how I look at it.
So, how you choose a character while writing, given a name, and how you approach somebody as an actor to play that part?
Yeah. So when we think of a narrative and we think of a character, let's say I have thought of a character who is a midget. And I then use my observatory remembrance to give him a character trait. कैसे चलेगा, कैसे बात करेगा, कहाँ बैठेगा. And then we start visualizing him. Like I said, that you visualize your film. And that's when you see a kind of facial features that come across. And you write it down. So there is something called character sketch. So character sketch. So when we write a script, there is something that I didn't tell you guys before. कि अगर मैं एक feature length का film बना रहा हूँ, so that film itself is a world. मैं एक world create किया हूँ. उसमें मैं सिर्फ 2 घंटे का एक film दिखा रहा हूँ. Now I have my lead, which is maybe Raviraaj ji, and he behaves in a certain way. Now that behavior, उनका जिंदगी तो मैंने शुरू किया फिल्म में जब वो एक पुलिस इंस्पेक्टर है, पर वो किस तरह से बिहेव कर रहा है, that is because of his world that I have created. So मुझे को उनका back character लिखना है, which can be pages. I need to think that what world he belonged to, what happened to him in his childhood, which leads to his behavior. So that background when I write, I can also define my character sketch. And when I write the character sketch, I might write that a man of, let's say, 5 feet 4 inch, tall, fair in complexion. Now why fair in complexion? Because maybe in his background world, he comes from a certain community. That's why. Or maybe I can write dark in complexion, because I might be writing a world which comes from a certain community, because that's what the character is. Then we look for an actor who fits the bill perfectly. You know, also the dialect, language, like Vikas ji, I'm sure we'll talk about that. Language is very important. Now, maybe I have written a character who speaks Hindi. अभी आपको पता होगा मेरा हिंदी में आपको शायद कुछ मिलेगा क्योंकि मैं असम से हूँ. You know, so अगर मेरा कैरेक्टर असम से है और वो हिंदी फिल्म कर रहा है, उसका हिंदी यूपी का अच्छा शुद्ध हिंदी नहीं हो सकता है ना, तो वो कौन कर पाएगा, वो एक्टर. सो दैट ऑल्सो ड्राइव्स मी टू फाइंड एन एक्टर लाइक दैट. नाउ टुडे इफ यू गाइज सी शैडो असैसिन्स, द पुलिस इंस्पेक्टर comes from, obviously it's a film based in Assam. You see the film and you will realize what I'm talking of. But that actor is not from Assam. He is not an Assamese actor. So, but I knew that he can do that. Deliver that accent. So I chose him. So it's like that. Yeah.
और कोई?
Yeah.
Currently, like, pursuing production and certificate film school. So when you talk like what you mentioned, that direction should be taught in the film school. But like what I have observed is like when you are into direction course in a film school, you get a lot of space when you get a technical term when you choreograph a scene and everything. But like if you are a director, so how free you are as a director, and how much of a space you give to your cast, to your production person, like what are your like expectations from them? Also, to adding that, when you go to film school, you get a lot of screenings. There are screenings happening every day in the film school. So, but to access that cinema, it is very difficult for a normal person sitting in Patna to get all that access. So, how we can get that access for like general? Because it's a lot of content is not available on YouTube. If we want to, like watch sunflowers and everything, it is not available on YouTube. So then how?
So you've asked 2 questions. Number 1 is that, see, all directors are human beings and so they have different palette. So A will not be like B and B will not be like C. In a film school, a direction student is, I think, at least in FTII I know, and to an extent SRFTI also I know the faculties there. There is an amount of control that a director needs to have, but an amount of freedom that a director needs to give also. That is what it has to be inculcated in a director. Because if I make everybody very rigid, and I think that is what is the film that I look at, and I'm making a film that I mentioned before, that from the bracket of that 90% of cinema of representation. I need to give that freedom, otherwise that film will look in a certain way very much, And I have to be very sure of myself, and it's a risk. It's a huge risk, because cinema is a collaborative medium. There is no denying it. You are from production course, right? Yeah. Production is the backbone of a film, So you are the spine. Because finally you will be the one delivering everything. I might ask for Taj Mahal in Patna and you will say possible or not possible. Mostly I will say that most of the production people actually go backward and they might bring Taj Mahal in Patna. So production wise, yes, and that's the kind of trust a director needs to have on his team. Trust is very important, because when you choose your crew, the cinematographer is your eye. The sound is your ear, So you have to trust that finally the person who is behind the camera is looking at the image the way you want it to look at. So a filmmaker like Sanjay Leela Bhansali, in the case of set design and the way he does his mise-en-scene, he's a master. His mise-en-scene is very good. But he does trust Sudeep a lot. And Sudeep has been shooting all his films since ages now, because Sudeep is the one who understands the kind of image that Bhansali is envisioning, and he delivers it. So that trust has to be there. And that trust, of course, in the process, it's built up. Now, if you look at Jean-Luc Godard, most of his films are shot by Raoul Cotard. Although Jean-Luc Godard has even given statements that my biggest enemy is my cameraman. Because whenever I asked for an image, he said it's not possible. Now that's because Godard may have asked that I need to shoot the moon the way it is. It's not possible because there are technological limitations. Tarkovsky, when he was making Sacrifice, if you guys are aware of it, the last scene of Sacrifice, actually the camera jammed. And उन्होंने घर को आग लगा दिया. शॉट हो गया और फिर कैमरामैन ने बोला कि एक्चुअली शॉट हुआ नहीं क्योंकि कैमरा जैम हो गया, नो टेक्निकल प्रॉब्लम. बट ही हैड दिस ट्रस्ट, सो व्हेन ही रीशॉट ही डिडंट चेंज द कैमरामैन. ही हैड टू कैमरामैन, वन एज अ बैकअप, कि फिर से ऐसा कुछ हुआ तो दो हो, so that kind of trust has to be built up, and the director needs to be as collaborative as possible. Answering your second question, I think it is possible in internet age, like I told you, even sitting in Patna, that if you know what kind of films to see, the first question is, do you know what kind of films you want to see? Now that is again, one leads to another. So if you might have seen a film by, let's say, Paatel, one of Paatel's short film is there. Now if you have seen Paatel's short film and you want to see another film like that and you look for Paatel's other film, you will get through that, Now there is a OTT platform called Mubi. Now if you go into Mubi, Mubi is a very interesting platform. It's cheap also, and Mubi actually shows world classics. Yes. So, and as you go into internet, you will find out about Mubi. It's not that you need a Nilanjaan to come and tell you. And you discover. So internet is your source. That's what I told you, that internet has actually made life accessible. And yeah, so if you have the drive, you will find it.
What are the things we need to consider before writing a screenplay? The background, how much we should let the story cook in our head to make it better.
Yeah, so first thing that you need to understand is what is the central conflict in your story. No, that is the biggest crask of a story, conflict. Now I'll give you a classic example that a teacher is teaching in a classroom and he goes back to his house every day, comes back to the classroom, teacher goes back to his house again. There is no story in it. The story is the teacher comes to the classroom, teacher goes back, comes to the classroom, goes back, comes to the classroom, a student takes out a gun to shoot him. The moment that the student takes out his gun to shoot him, you have a conflict. Why? So you need to find out your central conflict. And the moment you have found out your central conflict, the cinema follows, and mostly 90% of cinema follows a structure which is either a 3-act or a 5-act structure. So once you have your central conflict, you will have your idea of how do you get into the resolution of the conflict and what is your catharsis. The catharsis is what is your final exploit of that emotion, what is the solution to it. You figure out that in your story जब आप सोच भी रहे हो, so you normally tell a story with beginning, middle and end. Once we have a beginning, a middle and an end, we have the first germ of that idea. Then we expand according to what we want to do. Do we want to make it into a short film? Short film has a time limit. So if you look at short film, that also has a beginning, middle and end, but normally it circulates into one event. So I'll give you a story, small story. A boy is very excited because उनके घर में एक पूजा होने वाला है. रात को देवी आने वाला है. You know देवी, महाराष्ट्र में देवी आना एक सिंड्रोम होता है कि somebody comes and they call God onto them. So there's a lot of tamjam happening. The boy is very excited. He's running around. He's waiting for that process to start. And at night when the final performance happens, he falls asleep. So the full story is this. That's how short films are. Beginning, middle में सारा वो सब तामझाम, end he falls asleep. You know. So you need to figure out your duration. Now, if it's a feature film, it won't be one event oriented necessarily. It can be. Now, if you have seen a film like एक रुका हुआ फैसला, a very old film I'm mentioning. I don't know if you guys have seen it. So it's actually it's a film in one space, talking about a lot of spaces because it talks about a murder, and it's the juries who are discussing the person is guilty or not guilty. So depends on what is your story's beginning, middle, and end, and how you then expand it. As you start expanding, there are a lot of other threads which come in. Now, when I say thread, so it can be like there is 1-2 characters in your film. Those characters will also be influenced by other characters, or other characters will get influenced by their actions. So cinema is driven by action. Like if I write in a script, Nilanjaan is thinking. I don't know how you have to write. Nilanjaan is thinking how. How are you showing that he is thinking? You know, you have to write expressing what you want to show, and that's your shooting script. Am I? Is it okay for you? Yeah.
मेरे ख्याल से अब टाइम हम लोग का हो.
ठीक है. So thank you. In this small 1-hour cinema can be taught because normally. We have learned cinema for how many years? 5 years. So yeah, it was an attempt. And if you guys want to go ahead and get into making films, well, many of you are from an IDSRFT, obviously you have taken that plunge. Have that drive. Obviously, every road has a lot of hurdles, but if you have the drive, you will cross it. 100%. Thank you.